My name is DannoReg, and you're watching Behind the Scanner.
Your access level has recently increased. Excellent.
Go!
Incoming message.
So, let's start out with the obvious questions because I see the sign behind you. Yep, there you go. Ex FCC, which is probably what a lot of people know you best for. Talk to me about that a little bit. How did that get started? Why did you start that up?
Well, we're about 3 years in, coming up on our 3-year anniversary. And it started out as a really small group. You know, our group goes back all the way back to beta. And here locally in Portland, there was, just like you would have anywhere else really, with the politics and the people. And, there really wasn't so much of an idea of how to grow the communities the right way or the wrong way. It was kind of trial by error. I kind of found my niche with a lot of people that really didn't like the idea of the polarization between the one faction and the other, so much from the idea where you're saying, well, I can't be friend with the person on the other side because they're on the other side. And then, they would start throwing up words like OPSEC and things like that. Back in the day, it was really a lot more prevalent, and people were really taking it seriously. And it caused some problems, obviously, and those problems still continue. But we don't really focus on that stuff because it doesn't affect us so much anymore. Once you have the opportunity to start working with people on the other side, a lot of that stuff just goes away because you have access to all the really cool people in the game. So we kind of thought that might be the idea, and we decided to stretch out on our own instead of going with the normal communities that were available to us here locally. And the idea just spread.
Speaking of expansion, and I'm going to get this number wrong, I think you guys are in your 10th country or something like that. How many countries have you expanded to?
We're currently at 11. If you count, USA and Canada, we have a kind of grouped into one. If you consider both as 2 countries, then we're at 12, and we're actually about to launch 13.
Oh, wow. Can you give us a preview? What country is it?
I don't think they mind. I don't think they mind. No, we're working with Sweden right now.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. All right.
And we have one local chapter too, and that's here in Portland.
How has the reception been internationally? Has it been different than the U.S.? Do they have sort of the same vision that you have in the U.S.? Like, what's that like?
They have a lot of the same problems, that's for sure, and a lot of the same reasons for wanting to join Ex FCC. Part of the success model in all of this and growing in other countries is that we really want the countries to take on their Ex FCC as their own. That's why they do it in their mother language, and that's why they work the politics into it, and they work the angles into it to make sure that it's more of a cultured ground for a place for people to actually communicate on their issues. Now, as far as the issues go, like I said, they're pretty much the same through and through. You have your aggro people, you have your cliques, and you have your anti-faction people, and they're always going to be there. What Ex FCC is offering people is kind of like a sandbox, a place for them to go where they can work with other people without feeling like they have to ask permission of their own team, where they can just kind of do their own thing. And that's really what's been picking up, because when you start looking at the November Lima stuff, and you start looking at the Anomalies and cross-faction communication, which is what we're all about, really there's no better breeding ground for that kind of activity than Ex FCC. And so they're taking the models and applying it to their own country and their own concerns, and they're basically rising out of the ashes from all of that.
So if somebody were interested in forming their own local chapter or something, how do they get in touch with you guys?
You can just hit us up on Hangouts. You can send us a message through G+. We have a chapter, and all the chapters listed out there for all of our countries, whichever one is most comfortable to you. We operate on GroupMe as well, and if you ever wanted to start working on an Ex FCC in your local area, all they got to do is get a hold of one of the founders. That's me, Agent. Well, it's not Juliet anymore. It's Miss Diabla because she faction changed. And Trey, who is Facsimile, and Ara, who is Blast and Blossom. Blast and Blossom. Ara, who is Blast and Blossom.
Gotcha.
Oh, that's hard to say.
That's okay.
You say it. Blast and Blossom.
We'll edit it out. Blasted Blossom?
Blastin' Blossom.
Blasting Blossom. I see now. I can't say it either.
Right. It's a tongue twister. Thanks, Ara. Mm-hmm. And one of the good things about it is, we do vetting. We make sure that the people we're working with are truly interested in cross-faction and not trying to create another community that does a lot of the policing of Ingress, because that's not really what we're about. And we get a lot of people that think that that's what we do, and that's totally not what we do. So we talk to the people, make sure that they understand what Ex FCC is all about. And then we actually help them build the community. We give them the guidelines and help them grow, and they take it off in their own way. Like Switzerland just recently had this was the first time one of the chapters was talking about this, trying to figure out what language to use. And, they were running into the concern of, well, do we have 3 languages to be all inclusive, or do we have 1 language to make it easier for everybody and appear non-inclusive in that manner? And it was a really interesting debate to see, because it's one that I hadn't seen before. And this is an example of what chapters kind of have to go through to establish their own methodology for the Ex FCC model.
So what did they decide? What language? What languages?
They decided that if you wanted to speak in the chat in your mother tongue, you can. And if people don't understand you, then they'll just ask you to translate for them.
That's awesome. So it's simple. It's just don't change what happens day to day, and we'll figure it out.
Right. Look, if your version of Ex FCC is different than mine, that's okay. That's totally fine. As long as you're not being a jerk, as long as you're being nice to everybody and you're having fun playing the game, and you're making friends along the way, then you're totally welcome in Ex FCC.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit, talk about Ingress in a different way. And that is, how did you get started? How did you find the game?
My brother got me into the game when it was in beta. He sent me one of those invites. And of course, I had no idea what we were getting into. I don't think anybody else did. He only hung out for a few months, and then he bounced, and I stayed the whole time. But, it's also really small circles. There's a person here in town who people would consider my arch nemesis, which back in the day he was, and we have a very interesting relationship, he and I. We always end up in cities together for some strange reason. We just find ourselves there, and the other person's there already, and we're like, what are you doing here? And so that's just kind of the kismet that we have, where we just keep bumping into each other. So after a while, and this is before Ex FCC started, I decided to reach out to him and say, hey, we had some bad blood. Let's bury the hatchet and let's make it work. And he only lives a few miles away from my house anyway, so we ended up becoming friends. And now fast forward a few years, he's been in Ex FCC this whole time. He's been a good supporter. He's one of my main counterparts, especially when it comes to Anomalies. And he's actually working on his own business. He went to a trade show and he ended up in a booth right next to my brother. My brother saw the tattoos on his arms and said, hey, you play Ingress? And he says, yeah. And he says, you know DannoReg? Yeah. And he says, that's my brother. It's a small world.
It really is. It's amazing how Ingress sort of enables these experiences, and you find out how small the world really is. Stop me if you don't want to talk about this or not. But so you're a veteran, right? How, I read a lot of stories about people with PTSD and other disorders, and that Ingress has helped them with that. Do you know of any veterans, if you experienced it yourself? Like how has Ingress helped you?
So I do have a service-connected rating for PTSD with the military. And the way that it's come into me playing the game, at first I didn't even realize it was happening. I spent a lot of time looking at field ops and looking at action in the field and how we interact with each other as a squad, with a different kind of a mindset than the people that were playing the game. And in hindsight, rightly so. What we have in the game, coming in that time and afterwards are people that may not have military experience. Maybe they're used to playing video games online or on the computer, or maybe they're coming from a football field and they're used to being really, really aggressive towards people. And so not really understanding how, where my mindset was different than everybody is I ended up doing Ingress. I ended up playing Ingress kind of on my own terms, which there was a little bit of cloak and dagger involved. There was a little bit of gear management is one of the things that people talk about as one of the things that I ended up doing with it, or gear denial. Very tactical kind of engagements with people. And I think that's probably one of the things that veterans should be looking at when they start playing the game, because a lot of times the perspective from the people that you're playing against isn't the same. And I've actually had that flipped on me too, where there was a veteran that was coming after me one day. He came and met me outside of a porta potty, and he was being aggressive to me until we realized that we were both veterans and we were both basically taking the game way too seriously. That's the downside. That's the concern for a veteran is where the line is drawn as far as how seriously you take the game and how you apply your military training to it. Because some of it can be, some of the tactical stuff can be really useful. I did coordination I did operator for a couple of Anomalies doing car movement. And that was all logistics from my troop movement days back in the tanker business when we were deploying tankers across the solar seas to different countries. So all of that stuff came into play for those kinds of scenarios. It's a shift in the mindset, though, for sure. As far as the good stuff, one thing that a veteran typically has to deal with is a sense of hypervigilance, where you're constantly watching what's going on around you, and you're constantly aware of your surroundings and aware of threats if there are any, and how you're mitigating them. And when I've noticed when I left the military, there really wasn't any kind of outlet for that kind of a mindset. There's a threat of being hypervigilant at home and watching outside of your doorstep to see if people are walking by and or what they're doing. And sure, Ingress can bring some of that out of you, but also I've noticed that not having any kind of outlet for that particular concern, Ingress was a great in-between. It gave me the opportunity to focus on something, to focus on this digital battlefield that really didn't mean anything, and that I can engage as I wished without any kind of real repercussions if I did it right. And so that's really where I think the biggest benefit came from, is having a place to put this hypervigilant attitude.
Thank you for your service, first off. And the hypervigilant thing, this is one of those games that can make you paranoid really quickly, right? And so, having a understanding of what you're doing, where you are, how you're doing it, being self-aware, I guess, is definitely a good quality to have.
Well, those principles are fully entwined in Ex FCC too. I'm at a point now where, I really don't see anybody as a threat. I have just as many friends on the blue side as I do on the green side, and all of those friends are international, and everything's wonderful in the game. I can go to any city and find a friend, and that's a win to me.
So I mean, I get, one of the things I got to ask you is because I myself, when I took this job, I was a little wary about how people from the other faction would accept me, basically. So when you were starting out, how did people from the other faction accept you and this whole movement that you're trying to get off the ground?
Well, at first they didn't. Back then, it was very difficult for anybody to try anything cross-faction. I was just simply the one that said, challenge accepted. However, over time, and I was coming from, like I said, I was having the hypervigilance thing, and I was doing the cloak and dagger thing, and I was seeing how that was affecting other people for sure, the other side, much less my own. So I really had an uphill battle when it came to earning the trust of the people in the game. And, they say reputation precedes you. Nothing is even more evident in Ingress than that. Everyone will know who you are, at least who they think you are, and before they meet you. And then you have to kind of explain to them or show them that you're not that person. And so, I ended up with somewhat of a reputation for the cloak and dagger stuff, and people thought they knew who I was. And so it took quite a while to earn the trust of people on both sides. But, I was persistent, and I'm not, the way I look at it, I'm just going to be real with you. There's only two kinds of people in the world. There's good people and there's bad people. And no matter what group you're looking at, you're going to find one of those two people there. But when it comes to Ingress, if you have the ability to talk to people on the other side, you've just doubled your available opportunity for friendships. Because there's just as many good people on the other faction as there are on yours. And that's what I was counting on when we started Ex FCC. I realized that over the course of time, having a consistent message that's about inclusionary work and playing together and having fun, the kind of all, when you see at the end of a softball game, when they all shake hands at the end of the game. This is the part of Ingress that was missing at the time, and I felt like it was important to have that. So I went down that road, and over time, I started to gain the trust of the people on both sides, and it just kind of grew from there. We're at a point now where there are so many people doing cross-faction and doing it well that really all we're providing them at this point is a sandbox just to do it in. And we're totally happy about that, because that means that positive message has struck through in the end. 3 years of work, and it's happening. It's done. It's here.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're one of those guys that doesn't give up, because it's truly, you've got a global movement on your hands, and that's a good thing to have. So kudos to you and your persistence.
Thank you.
That's awesome to see it grow over all these years. What about when you go out and play? Like, what kind of a player are you? Are you do you like to blow stuff up? Do you like to capture? Are you a fielder? I mean, I'm sure you like the intel operating side of things. We've already talked about that a little bit, but when you're in the field, what's your play style?
I'm definitely a smasher. I like to go out and blow everything up, and I go out there and I just get loud with the Berkshires. Everybody knows I'm there. When I visit towns, sometimes I'll go through and just take the whole town, and then say, "Hey, nice town. I think I'll take it." I like to, my way of having fun with the game is going out and trying to get as many uniques as possible and get as much, get as many people seeing what's happening as possible, so I can actually start meeting people and having this kind of conversation with them. When I see people on the street that are playing Ingress, they say, "Hey, are you DannoReg?" And you just know me from the scanner because I've been blowing it up. It gives me an opportunity to say, "Hey, yeah, and I'm a guy, you seem really cool. Let's chat about cross-faction." And I get a lot of mixed responses from that kind of thing, but that doesn't discourage me either. I definitely like to I'm a basher through and through.
So you're that guy that turns like me. You turn the volume all the way up, and you start firing your XMPs.
Oh my God! The more bacon, the better. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So. One of the questions I ask a lot of people, is how many anomalies have you been to? Because I know that I've seen you personally at, I don't even know now, that feels like a half dozen at least. But
yeah, I mean, I could look at my scanner. I've lost count. I know I don't know. It feels like a dozen. Yeah. It feels like all of them. I mean, my first anomaly was 13 Magnus, the original one in Seattle. And Ex FCC's first one was Persepolis in Portland. 2 straight rows of anomalies, so yeah, 12.
Wow, nice. Well, I hope to see you at a lot more in the future.
I plan on coming to them. You know what? Most anomalies I've gone to, the after parties and the fun times haven't really been so much of a problem. to bring people in. There's been a few exceptions, but those exceptions are really kind of a dying fad of people that are just trying to hold control over a certain area when they really don't have it. So
Yeah, I will have to say the after parties that I've gone to, there's definitely been an increasing cross factionalization going on where, before it was almost taboo, and even myself, when I first took the job, I'd go to the resistance after party and I'd feel really awkward, but people really, they don't care. I mean, you're there to have a good time, unless you're one of those people that starts a lot of drama, you get welcomed in and you have beers or shots with folks and you just chat with people. And, I think it's important for people just to realize that, outside of the game, we're all just human beings and not to take it too seriously, and let's just have a good time.
Yeah, I've kind of seen a trend in that. In the very beginning, it used to be the resistance party, the enlightened party, and
right.
They would break right after the announcement from the Anomalies, and so like Niantic was sitting there with a big empty venue, and but what I'm seeing more of now is a lot of people really making an effort to try to get together and have more cross-faction fun. So they'll go out and do missions together. They'll go out and just hang out with each other. They'll give each other tours. They'll take them to parks and take them to other areas, malls and stuff. And the after parties for sure. I mean, when I'm traveling, I don't think there's ever been a city that I've not been able to go to both after parties, at least within the last year. So it's really changed. The culture's changed a lot, and I'm really happy about that because the divisiveness of the factions, as it was back in the day, really wasn't anything that was going to last. You can't be that staunch towards each other for so long without someone saying, "Hey, this isn't right."
Well, have you been to any anomalies outside of the U.S.? Canada doesn't count. Sorry, Canada, but
no, I haven't. I have not, and I've gotten so many offers from so many great people overseas that really want to have a full Ex FCC thing going down at one of their anomalies, and I would love to provide one. We do have people overseas that are providing them. We have Germany is our main European one, but Mexico is also involved. We have India. And, you can go down the list. There's activity going on. Me personally, I have not gone to one overseas. I would really love to do one next year. I'd really have to kind of pick and choose which one it's going to be. But I mean, just like anybody, we need the money to do it. I need the money to do it to go out there. So it's not due to not wanting for sure. I definitely want to try to get it done next year.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. You guys have a slogan, right? You don't give hugs, you give handshakes, something like that.
The hugs and handshakes one we haven't used in quite a while. Although if
now I'm showing my age, yes,
it really fits. Yeah, that was back in the Red Cell lookup days. What we say most often is play hard, play fair, and I think that pretty much sums it up. You ask me how I am on the scanner. I'm a beast on the scan, and I pull no punches. I'll use any device that Niantic has provided in the scanner at any given time, just because I want to, because that's the way that the game works. But when it comes to socializing and being polite with people and having friends and doing cross faction, there's really no boundaries there, because we're all people in the end. So play hard, play fair. I really think that nails it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The game is defined by its actions itself, and the game will tell you what you can or can't do. The rest is all consideration, and the question is, who do you want to give consideration to? There's always the chance to give consideration to the people that are operating in the field and have a vested interest in what's happening as far as the fields go and as far as the links go. And sure, when you're going out there, you can block your own team, or you can go out there and be counterproductive. The game's not going to stop you from doing that. The only thing that's going to stop you is your consideration.
Thank you for being on. Thank you for coming on and talking. Really appreciate it. Best of luck for CC in the future, and best of luck with expanding in Country 12 and 13, and hopefully 13 more to come after that next year.
I hope so. And if you guys see me out there at Anomaly, come shake my hand.
Will do, definitely. All right, brother. We'll catch you later.
All right. Catch you later.
Your access level has recently increased. Excellent. Incoming message.
Well, I can't hear you. Did you mute yourself?
I did mute myself. Oh, that's a party foul. I got to do a shot. I can't believe I did that.